Hey everyone, this is the Spoon Dude, back with another Marvel Legends style DC custom action figure. This time we are finally taking a look at my custom Nightwing figure. After making my Batman, it was a no-brainer for me to make Nightwing, as he is my favorite Batman character outside of Batman himself. I used the Marvel Legends X-Men Deadpool as the base figure. This body mold has great articulation, and I thought its kind of medium athletic build was perfectly suited for Dick Grayson. Now, of course, Deadpool has a mask, so for the head, I ended up having to use a Steve Rogers head that was previously on my Avengers Endgame custom Captain America. Now, since I already had the official version of that Captain America, I pretty much decided that the custom was just fodder at this point, and I ended up using his unmasked head for Nightwing. Finally, I took the gripping hands from a Black Panther. Now, I know Deadpool already has gripping hands, but since they were yellow, I was kind of worried about paint rub. I wanted to pose Nightwing a lot using his batons and all that, and I was just worried that paint would be constantly coming off on those yellow hands. Black Panthers were a dark gray color, so paint rub would be kind of easier to limit there, since even if the black paint does chip off, it's dark on dark, so it's not as noticeable. Now, Nightwing has had many designs over the years, but to me his definitive look is from the late 90s/2000s, where he's got the all-black bodysuit and a logo that extends from his chest to his fingers. I specifically used Jim Lee's rendition of that design from Batman Hush, as he kind of simplified the costume, and I just used that design because it would have been an easier custom to make, since I only had to worry about the logo and the head. In prepping the figure, I first used acetone to strip off most of the paint that was on the Deadpool. This makes it so that it's all a flat, even surface, so that when painting you don't notice, the raised lines of some of the paint that was on the factory figure. Then I took the figure apart in most of the joints except the torso, because taking apart figures at the torso is really hard, and I didn't want to do that, so I took it apart everywhere else though. I heavily sanded the surfaces of every piece so that I could prevent paint rub. I used the same kind of trimming thing that I did on my Batman and Superman, using my sandpaper and X-Acto blade to trim the elbow and knee joints, ankle joints, and even at the butterfly joints and shoulders, so that I could reduce paint rub to almost zero. Check out my video on my Batman if you want a little bit more detail on how I do that. Now, the Deadpool figure was pretty articulated, but weirdly his elbows are kind of limited in the range. They can only go about 90 degrees or so. So I also removed some of the plastic there so he can get a little bit of a deeper bend for all those fighting poses and stuff. I also tried giving him better outward hip movement by trimming some of the plastic at his hip joints. He still can't do the full splits, but hopefully you can see in this comparison with my custom Flash, who is on the same body mold but without the modifications. You can see my Nightwing has a bit of a wider stance. So that's a little bit more articulation that I wanted to get out of this Nightwing. So for sculpting, like I said, all I had to worry about was the head and the logo. For his head, I removed the hair from when he was Steve Rogers and then re-sculpted the hair entirely, as well as also sculpting his Nightwing mask. I used Jim Lee's art as inspiration for the hairstyle, so he has that kind of part in the middle. I sculpted it a little bit more subdued than how Jim Lee draws it. If you notice the art, Jim Lee gives Nightwing sort of a messy hairstyle with hair strands all over the place, which was just not possible for me to do since the Milliput epoxy clay I was using gets too brittle if you try to sculpt it into thin pieces like hair. So I had to be kind of really methodical in the way I sculpted the hair. You'll notice I did try to make it protrude from his face a little bit, but it's still sculpted to his face so that it doesn't just chip off or break off when posing, or if it happens to fall. It's not my best hair sculpt. A lot of the detail gets kind of lost, and it's not quite as polished as I want it to be. But you know what? I don't mind it too much. I thought about getting a Nightwing head from just any other Nightwing figure, but that would kind of defeat the whole purpose of making custom. So after the head, I just needed to sculpt the logo, which I did on just the torso where it's most striking. I skipped sculpting the logo on the arms, which I know makes it a little bit inconsistent from the torso to the arms, but I didn't think it was that noticeable. And I was just a little bit worried that if I did sculpt it on the arms, then it might chip off when I reassembled the figure, and I didn't really want to have to deal with all that. So I just painted it on the arms, and I don't think that's noticeable. And finally, the last detail that I had to sculpt was the collar of his costume on his neck. Painting this guy was pretty fun. I primed his body a flat black, and that pretty much was the main color for most of his body. I did go back in with my brush to fill in some of the spots that the spray paint kind of missed. From there, I painted his boots a gloss black, just so he has a little bit more going on. And then his logo is a metallic blue, which if you see my Wonder Woman or Cyclops figure videos, I achieved that metallic blue just by mixing a silver and a blue, and I think it looks really nice. So for his head and neck, I painted it first with a reddish kind of flesh tone, and then dry brushed the lighter shades on top so that it has a little bit of depth and looks a little bit more realistic. I painted his lips a different color, and then his mask is the same gloss black as his boots, and then his eyes are just a flat white. The hair is the same flat black that's on the body, except I went with some blue washes and some subtle blue kind of dry brushing to give it some shading, and it also kind of makes the hair look slightly different from his costume. And then the last thing Nightwing needed was, of course, his signature Escrima Sticks or batons. I used the DC Collectibles action figure stand from one of those animated figures, and I cut it into 2 sticks that I sanded and then painted black. They're really simplistic, and they don't have any detail, but I think they get the job done of being sticks he can whack people with. Overall, I'm really happy with how this figure turned out. I love the metallic blue logo, and I'm pleased with the flat black of his body. Like I said, I thought the articulation on this figure was perfect for Nightwing, and the butterfly joints help especially for any fighting poses or, jumping poses and all that. Because of all the work I put into prepping it, paint rub is not much of a problem, so I can pose it almost as much as I want. I like how he looks next to my custom Batman and Robin, and I also think he looks great fighting with my custom Deathstroke. Anyways, I hope you guys like the custom too. Please leave your thoughts on it in the comments below, and also let me know which DC custom should I do a video on next. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos if you haven't already. I hope to see you on my next one. Thanks for watching.